The lack of ego. I've always believed in myself, and I'm a dog. Those were the quotes of Media Day for your Utah Jazz open of the season. And we'll break down that plus a bunch of other notes next on Locked On Jazz. Bum 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 bum. Pow.
You are Locked On Jazz, your daily podcast on the Utah Jazz. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
David Locke, radio voice of the Utah Jazz, Jazz NBA insider. This is Locked On Jazz, your daily podcast on the Utah Jazz. Give you insight, expertise, geeky numbers, and hopefully making it way better to be a Jazz fan each and every day. Today, we run through Media Day. The quote of the day is an egoless group from John Collins, and we'll let you hear from John Collins, the exact quote. Plus, I asked John Collins, I'm confused of who you are as a player after your stint in Atlanta. Was it confusing for you? And hear what he had to say about that. Lauri Markkanen shares about what the positive impact of his military experience is. Plus, I asked Lauri Markkanen if he believes in himself more after last year than he did prior, and you'll hear that answer. We talked to Kris Dunn. Yesterday, I said that Kris Dunn, if I were him, I'd go to camp and I'd just eat these guys alive. And I asked Kris Dunn, if I was going to camp, I would do this. Is that what you're going to do? And he gives you that answer. Plus, what did Kris Dunn learn about himself in his 22-game stretch with the Utah Jazz? That's all coming up on a very fun Locked On Jazz today. As I mentioned, I'm David Locke, radio voice of the Utah Jazz, and this is Locked On Jazz. We are free and available on all podcasting apps as well as on YouTube. We do love those 5-star reviews because who doesn't like an ego boost? Actually, it helps a ton. Please subscribe, join us, and be a part of it, as well as the Jazz head to Hawaii to start training camp, and we've got it all broken down. Plus, I got about 15 notes for you from training camp that all took place. Today's show is brought to you by Gametime. Gametime, the Gametime app. Create an account, download it now. Use your code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase at Gametime. All right, let's get to it straight away. We're just going to give you a bunch of the sound. John Collins was most interesting because we hadn't talked to him before. I wanted to kind of interact with him, hear who he was and what he was like. So let's get him. I'm going to play 2 little 1-minute snippets of John Collins, and we can talk about it as well. So let's share some screens and give you guys a chance to actually hear John Collins and what he said out of his voice rather than just me characterizing it. Here's the first part from John Collins.
I'll tell you the one thing that has surprised me is the lack of ego in here. It's refreshing, you know what I mean, to have a group of guys that truly emphasize playing team basketball and that want to do so. It's nice for me to see and exciting for me to be around. And, that helps me wake up in the morning motivated to go play.
So that was the first part from John Collins. That was the quote that kind of jumped to everyone. It's an egoless group. You certainly can wonder whether there's a veiled shot in there from what he dealt with in Atlanta, which might have been a very ego-filled group. But it was that's a really positive for him, that to be his energy with a new group. He's got a better understanding of it. And that's exactly what we talked about on yesterday's show, is that we've got to have that group to be able to play the way that Will Hardy wants to play. We'll touch on that some more. Here's the second part I thought was interesting with John Collins. And I asked John Collins, I just said, I got to be honest, I don't know John at this point at all. I've never talked to him until yesterday. So it's a little awkward. And I said, hey, I don't know you yet, but I'm a basketball junkie. And honestly, if someone asks me about your game right now, I just don't know. It's just transformed and changed so much. I just don't know. And so I said, are you confused by what your journey is? And he asked me to kind of clarify confusing. And then here was his answer.
Yeah. And that was part of, I feel like who I am as a player going into Atlanta and being able to sort of adjust my game to what was being asked of me that year. And I feel like I did as best job as I could, from being a roller, from being a 5-man to being a rim runner to being a roller. I tried to do everything I could to continue to stay effective and productive. And sometimes things just don't work out for whatever reason. I felt like I was doing a damn good job, but when your usage rate drops lower than it was in your rookie year, that tells me a lot. So I didn't try to, think about it too much. I just try to go out there and play basketball in a way that I could help affect my team, even though that wasn't the way that I've been used and been asked to play in previous years. And, that's just the way the league works sometimes. So I went back into the lab this summer and try to just get better and try to be prepared for everything.
So that was John Collins' kind of comment to his situation and what he's been through and how it's impacted him in his career. And so I thought those were really, really interesting quotes would be the first thing I would say. The second one is he made some other comments that were of immense interest. He talked about how Will Hardy just plays different basketball than what he was used to playing in Atlanta, and he's excited for that. Obviously, Atlanta, heliocentric, centered around Trey. And that's actually the comment he made before he made the lack of ego comment. So interesting that those two kind of played together. He should be the way that we play. I should be more rewarded in the way the offense is working. And then he went into Will plays basketball differently than Atlanta. That's when he then went into lack of ego. His next thing he talked about, I had not thought of and was really interesting. And that was he hoped to stretch his game out to the 3. Every conversation I've had about John Collins is John Collins playing the 4 to start and sliding to the backup 5. Let's throw another thing out there. I hadn't thought about it till John said it, but we don't really have Luka Samanic is in all likelihood our backup 3. Ochai Agbaji slides down. We get Small as a backup 3. If one of the signatures of who we are is that we're going to stay big the whole time, well, then what about if we flip this the other way? John Collins slides to the 3. You have Kelly Olynyk and Omar Yurtseven on the floor together. Like, I don't know Yurtseven and how, what kind of player he's going to be. He played, 9 games last year for Miami, 56 the year before. He did play 13 minutes a night. I mean, if you're doing that, you're only doing that for 3 or 4 minute stints. And so you look at Yurtseven's 13 minutes a night and, in 58 games 2 years ago, maybe he added a 3 last year. In the sense he hit 3 of them in 7 attempts. So it's not clear. He was 1 of 11 the year before. I really don't know. If I'm being perfectly honest, I don't know enough about Yurtseven's game to be like, is this a guy that can be a rim defender in the ilk of a backup 5? And so we actually then have 48 minutes of rim defense at 7 feet tall. Is this a guy who can stretch out and play with Kelly Olynyk, John Collins, and suddenly we're stretched 5 out? That's something I'm going to be really curious to watch during training camp to see, the 83% free throw shooting 1 year, 64% free throw shooting for his career doesn't tell me like the data points I would look for on Yurtseven to try to figure out like, well, I don't have him. And I didn't watch him enough. Being, to be perfectly honest with you, George in college, he shoots 70% and shoots from the free throw line. He does make like 25 threes, I think it was, at North Carolina State and Georgetown. The only thing that was really interesting to me when I kind of dug into him last night, because of the fact that this got to my thought, is he's really young. He's 25 years old, and he played at NC State as a freshman. He was 18. So I don't know. That was one thought that kind of jumped out. The other one I thought was really interesting about John Collins that maybe you knew and just I think I knew, but it kind of so one is that as a military kid, which we all knew because he was born in Layton. Then he lived in Guam, he lived in Turkey, he lived in the Virgin Islands, he lived in Florida, he lived in Tacoma most. That's what he really thinks is home, is the Pacific Northwest. That's the kind of guy you can adapt in a locker room easier because of that. Those are the little tiny things that actually matter a little bit, because I think they open up an opportunity for you to kind of get along with different people in different stages in your life, and you've had a lot of different experiences, and you've had to make friends and learn how, like, that's a real skill. I mean, frankly, like one thing that's super interesting to me right now is these guys are all my kids' age. Like I've gotten old enough that these guys are all my kids' age. And a lot of the stories my kids come back and tell me, I can kind of relate to what they're going through, particularly when I was talking to Keontae about goal setting. I just felt like I was talking to my daughter. But like one thing my son's talked about going to college is like some of the people he knows like know how to make friends or don't. Some were in such kind of closed group situations that they hadn't really learned how to make friends, that their friends were kind of made for them by the school system they were in, or the small group that they were in, or the sports team they were in. Well, if you're John Collins and you've lived in Guam and lived in Turkey and lived in the Virgin Islands and lived in Tacoma and moved every 5 or 6 years, then you've had to learn how to make friends. And that's learned how to interact with different types of people. And so I think that's a really interesting group. The last one John Collins said that kind of jumped out to me was he has just never played with skilled bigs before. So you think about John Collins playing with Kelly Olynyk and Lauri Markkanen. He's never played with skilled bigs before, and that's probably true. Clint Capella was the most recent big he's played with in Atlanta. His other, he was the starting center and the others. So that will be interesting to see what that means from Lauri Markkanen. I asked him, well, first we'll hear from Lauri. They'll all play together about what he learned about himself in military that will parlay onto the court. And two, I asked Lauri if he believes in himself more or trained differently, and if he believes in himself more than he did in the past because of last year. We'll hear that from Lauri, plus some other interesting comments from Lauri. And then Kris Dunn kind of stole the show to end the day yesterday. Plus, I got a ton of notes, which I'll either get to today or this week as training camp continues all week long. I'm David Locke, radio voice of the Utah Jazz. Ron Boone and I will be in Hawaii for you Sunday to tip this thing all off. Excited to get the season going. I'm super juiced right now, to be totally honest with you about everything. So we'll have that as we continue here on Locked On Jazz. Today's show is brought to you by Murdoch Hyundai, located in Linden, Logan, and in Murray at 4646 South State Street. The Hyundai lineup of cars is killing it. The Ioniq 5 is the Motor Trend SUV of the year. The Ioniq 6 is the car of the year. The new 2024 Kona, oh my gosh, is it styling and cute and fun. Same kind of size as the very popular Subaru Sports Track, and now stealing that market. What a fun car out there, starting right at about $30,000, getting 32 miles to the gallon with all-wheel drive. Wow, 190 horsepower. And there's the new Kona Electric that's also available. So estimated range of about 260 miles. So that is just awesome that they have added those. The lineup of cars is just so great. The Santa Cruz is a sports adventure vehicle I was driving earlier. It was so fun. It's all at Murdoch Hyundai, located at 4646 South State Street. Also in Logan and Linden. If you're going to stop by, please tell me first so that we can get you the VIP treatment that you deserve at Locked On Jazz. We have it all set up for you at all those places. So please do so. If you're out shopping, it's football season. You want pizza, you want wings, you're doing just the grocery shopping for the family. It all feels like it costs a little bit more right now, and it probably does. So let me introduce you to Ibotta, that gives you cash back on hundreds of grocery items, from produce to personal care to pantry goods, so that you can make sure that you're beating inflation no matter what you're purchasing. Link your loyalty accounts or upload your receipt after you shop, and you get cash back. The average Ibotta user earns up to $100 per year. That could be a plane ticket. That could be another day of groceries. That could be whatever it is. You can get Ibotta at Lowe's, Macy's, Sephora, Best Buy, also so online brands. So download the Ibotta app now and use the code LOCKED to start earning real cash back. Ibotta is IBOTTA in the Google Play or App Store. And then the promo code LOCKED will get you going. Just go to the App Store, Google Play, download the free Ibotta app, use the promo code LOCKED, and get started today and save while you're shopping as you get ready for whether it's football games or whatever it might be. A lot of fun, little fun, sitting around watching the Jazz on Jazz Plus, whatever it might be, all with Ibotta, promo code LOCKED. Thanks so much for making Locked On Jazz your first listen of the day. Have you subscribed to Jazz Plus yet? The numbers are big time coming in right now. People are jumping all over it. It's so reasonable at $125 a season. Plus, if you do it now, you get 2 free tickets. So go jump on it right now, nba.com/jazz/Jazz Plus. Make sure you are a Jazz Plus member. Get the exclusive content. Ron and I will be doing a bunch of stuff. The Jazz content crew is doing amazing stuff. By the way, big shout out to the Jazz content crew for having all the interviews up on YouTube. And they're available for you if you want to go through Media Day. I'm obviously giving you the 3 things that I thought were highlights. Let's go to Lauri Markkanen, who is really, by the way, one of my biggest takeaways of the day yesterday was just truly what a delightful person Lauri Markkanen is. That was kind of one of my big takeaways yesterday, is he's just such a fun. He sat down. The first thing he did was make fun of Tony Jones, which we all like. And then in this thing, Andy Larson drops a bottle of water, and you can see him just kind of busting his butt. It's just great. Lauri's just a super good dude. And by the way, like on Muscle Watch and a bunch of guys, golly, is he just an unbelievable chiseled Adonis. I mean, I just went and saw Michelangelo's David, and Lauri Markkanen is like the walking version of it. It's crazy. His physical condition, his jawline, his lack of body fat. Was he just chiseled. So if anybody had any worry that the military stuff was going to impact him, do not. All right, here's what Lauri answered to a Salt Lake Tribune reporter about what's going on with what he learned kind of off the court military. And then I asked him about whether he trained differently after kind of knowing his role. And then I followed with a quick follow-up, and he gives the greatest answer. So listen very closely at the very end of this. It's going to run for a minute.
Pushes yourself, pushes me individually, kind of not take any days off, not take any plays off during the games or practice, and really do the right things, and can't really be messing around. I think that's kind of that keeps you on track for sure.
This is the first time you've gone to an offseason knowing you're the man for the team the next year. How did that change the way you approached your offseason, or how you feel right now?
Approach is the same way, same hunger that I've always had every offseason, and that's what I really try to work on because I know the season's going to look. The season's going to look a little different, but I mean, it was motivating me at the same time to work even harder, kind of, because we really want to step into that leader role on the court, like playing wise as well. So,
do you believe in yourself differently now than you did a year ago?
I've always believed in myself.
Isn't that a great answer? Do you believe in yourself differently than you did a year ago? I've always believed in myself. Oh, wait a second. We got day in the life of Shaedon Sharpe is what YouTube decided I need next. I do not need a day in the life of Shaedon Sharpe. All right, so a little bit more on Lauri. I just thought that was great. I mean, he's just that. I just thought that was great. Like that comment, that quote, I've always believed in myself. That was the perfect answer. If you've been around athletes, that's exactly what you want to hear. That's what every sports psychologist would tell you is the right answer. That's, so super interesting. Big conversation from Will Hardy the other day about Lauri Markkanen. It was about his need to lead. He didn't ask for it, but he's now the leader. What I think was really interesting about Lauri yesterday was how much he understands that, but he also understands how he's going to be capable of doing that rather than maybe the way we think of leadership. But Lauri's an introvert by nature. Like that's he's fun and he's energetic and he's actually pretty humorous. It was a really funny day last year at Shoot Around. It was the day we were in Memphis. It was the day after Valentine's Day, and they were trying to build a zone to stop John Morant's drives. And the coach was like, put your hands out, touch each other's hands. And he was next to Jordan. And he looked at it, he goes, yesterday, Valentine's Day, I'd hold his hand, but not today. It was just super funny kind of interactions. And then there was another moment where they were like at Shoot Around that same day. And I can't remember exactly how it worked, but they're doing something. And it was something about, hey, when they swing it to this guy, he's going to shoot it every time. And Lauri turned to Jordan like, do you understand that? Like it was just super fun. So he's as much as he's an introvert, he's very fun to be around. He's got a great personality. He's very kind of witty, which usually to me means he's very bright. But his instinct's not to like walk into the locker room and MF the crew and go crazy or something like that, or, scream and yell and go nuts. That's not who he is. So when he was talking about leadership, I thought it was really interesting what he talked about. He's like, I'm going to lead by example. And even Will said the other day, he's got to be aware to not change his demeanor and his body language. They're all watching him now at every moment. And he seemed to be aware of that. And then the other thing he talked about was, I just have to continue to be communicating with the group. And that's where I think the biggest change is for Lauri. Lauri's instinct would be to be this funny guy, interact, be part of the team, go to work, show up, be in perfect physical condition, bust his ass every day, come early, stay late, all the things you want, but then probably go to dinner with some buddies by himself, stay off to the side. He's not a rah-rah guy. And I think he understands now, like, okay, I actually have to be the one communicating. If there's a burden to this, right? If someone's not playing well, I probably have to reach out, whether it's via text or just tapping them on the shoulder, check how they are. John Collins shared that he got a text from Lauri the minute he got traded. See, I don't think that's something Lauri would have naturally done. I think that's Lauri's, I don't know that, but that's Lauri's development of leadership coming together. So I think that's kind of where Lauri understands his leadership is. It's by being in constant communication with the players so they feel connected to him. And then he can lead by example. Then he can lead by action so that they feel that connection rather because he's just not going to be a rah-rah guy. So I think that was really interesting insight and shows some growth from Lauri on that one. The other one is on a basketball court. He talked about footwork to create separation. And the thing on Lauri is first half of the season last year, his isolation numbers were amazing. Second half of the season, they were bad. And some of that was who he was playing with. Some of that was teams adjusting. Some of that was right. So him being in a new role he's never been in. I thought the most incredible part of Lauri last year, frankly, was that he handled being in a role that he'd never been in before in a manner by which the scouting reports came and he never flinched. And he just kept kind of getting through all that. And it led me, super impressive to me that he was able to kind of keep that going all year long. And so, but there was some slippage of efficiency. He also wasn't playing with Mike Conley, wasn't playing with Malik Beasley, wasn't playing with some of those guys by the end of the year. But so he talked about footwork to create separation. That'll be something I'll be keeping an eye on here during training camp, during the preseason games, to keep an eye on what that footwork is, who he's working with. I'll talk to his coaches. I'll get you more on all of that. All right. Kris Dunn, I thought, kind of stole the show on a bunch of fronts. And I've got 3 different snippets I'm going to try to get for you on Kris Dunn. One about just kind of what he learned about himself in the 22-game run with the Jazz. What I asked Kris Dunn, if you're an everydayer and you listen to yesterday's show, I said, if I was Kris Dunn, I would be like looking around the room like Hunger Games, being like, okay, I'm knocking you off, and then I'm knocking you off. And then so I asked Kris Dunn specifically that, like if that's his approach coming into this, and he gave an interesting thought on that. And then I thought he and Omer Yurtseven both had some interesting kind of comments that if you're into sports psychology and athletics and performance, with both my kids playing sports still, I am very much, and hear these things and then relay them to which they probably hate, probably terrible parenting. But I do. So he had a really interesting comment on that. And then I'll wrap this up with the story of the whole media day from one Jordan Clarkson. It's all continuing as we roll through on your daily podcast on the Utah Jazz, Locked On Jazz. Thank you very much for making Locked On Jazz your first listen of the day. Josh Lloyd's got Locked On Fantasy Basketball rolling, Locked On NBA rolling as well. All right, let's go to Kris Dunn. Hope this has all worked correctly. I think I did it correctly. You never know with me. I'm getting old. Technology is not always my friend. All right, here's Kris Dunn. This is right after I've just asked him basically what I said a moment ago. Like, okay, if I was you coming to camp, I would be doing the following: checking this guy, looking at this guy, marking this guy, knocking them all off. I'm on a non-guaranteed contract, and I'm here to prove myself. I'm playing for my life. Here's what he said.
No, I think that was my mentality when I was younger. That's how I kind of approach things. But, as being a veteran guard, it's almost like, go out there, play my game, but at the same time, try to teach. We got a lot of young guards. I know defense is, one of my, main things I can lean on. And, I want to help people become even better defenders. I think Oach could be a really good defender. I think Taylor could be a really good defender. Keontae, Colin, I think he is a good defender. Just try to teach them some of my tricks. And then I'm one of those guys, I'm like a sponge. I even go up to the rookies, ask them what they think. We got a lot of offensive talents on the team. I like to pick their brains and put it in my game. So I think this training camp is just to compete and learn from each other.
So interesting comments from Kris. Kris was very, very insightful on a bunch of this. Let's go grab kind of part 2 of what I thought was interesting on Kris. We asked him what he learned. Andy Larson, I think, asked the first question, and then I followed up with what did you learn about yourself in the 22-game stretch you had with the Jazz?
I'm a dog. Honestly, just through my journey, a lot of people might have quit, when things got rough. I got a lot of good people around me, my family. I got to give credit to them. God, my guardian angel. So I feel like through my journey, I stayed even killed. I really do have love for this game, and I think that's what kept me going, just my passion and my drive for this game. And I appreciate the Jazz giving me the opportunity, and let's see what I could do with it.
I think that last part is the essence of Kris from the conversations I've had with him, is that, he his heart, his will, probably not his will, his heart, his love for the game. Some of those things got broken in the process through Chicago, through being bounced around. And then when he went back to the G League and he found out who was really truly loyal to him, because at that point it's, when you're in the G League playing, there aren't people around you anymore. And I think that's when he really learned, he got that love of the game. I had a great conversation with him last year. I'm playing a shot here. He gave a really fun kind of closing thing to the whole day where he ran through his thoughts on Talen Horton-Tucker, Bryce Sensabaugh, and Keontae. And I'm going to see if I can just get lucky and grab it.
You got a flamethrower.
I missed by like 10 seconds. So give me a little window here. If you're still with us on the show, you like me enough. All right, here it is. Here's Kris Dunn kind of running through his teammates.
Has stood out about each of them to you thus far?
I mean, their own personal identity and their own style. I could start with Keontae. I mean, I tell him each and every day, he got a flamethrower. The kid can knock down shots. He can shoot the ball really well. For a young age, he got a good IQ. Defensively, I want to help him. But I think he got a swag about him, a confidence. That's what I love. I feel like on the court, I could play right next to him because he got that same kind of swag and confidence that I like to play with. Taylor's like a hard hat. He don't do too much talking. He want to get in here, work. He want to go hard each and every day. And Bryce, I call him like the smooth operator. Off the court, he gonna have the fit to him, but on the court, I mean, he could knock down shots. He could put it on the deck, and everything's just like calm, smooth. But, each and every one of them, they come in and work. They don't complain. They do their job. And, I mean, who can't appreciate that?
So there's a little bit about the three youngsters from Kris Dunn. And that's a lot of the Media Day stuff. I've got other notes for you from Media Day that I'll kind of have throughout the week for you. A little bit more on the kind of the Kris Dunn. What I thought was really interesting from Kris Dunn is he talked about, if you keep your mind clear, the magic comes from the work. So true, right? And I asked a lot of these guys, like, what would you tell the youngsters about when they say if they came up to you and asked you what's harder than we think it's going to be, what would your answer be? And Kris Dunn gave the answer, but then kind of said, like, the key is you got to keep your mind clear and the magic comes from the work. I mean, for those who've done meditation, it's the phrase in Buddhist meditations, the monkey mind, where you've just got things going all the time. Like, I think as a player or anyone, you can create stories in your head that don't exist or that are detrimental to your well-being. And I think, he's talking about, keep your mind clear and then the magic comes from the work. But if you do the work and then you have a confused brain or a dirty brain or just creating artificial stories in your head, then you're probably not going to get there. The other one was Omer Yurtseven, who I asked what heat culture was like. And I'll probably try to grab that tomorrow or something, because I thought it was really interesting. Constant competition to stimulate growth, conditioning and strength are required for constant competition. I thought that was really an interesting concept. So his version of heat culture was that we're in constant competition at all times to stimulate growth, but that conditioning and strength are required to be able to have constant competition. Love that. So those are my two kind of big takeaways. The story of the day was I asked Jordan Clarkson whether or not last year his kind of most unique moment was walking the runway in some of the Giorgio Armani, I think it was, shows in Italy. What was his most unique thing this year? And he shared that he went on tour with his girl for, I think he said 2 weeks. If you don't know, she's a really popular punk star, like 3 million Instagram followers, like big in that world. And he said their tour bus crashed in Germany, that the driver basically fell asleep and drove off the road, got ill, he said. and lost control of the tour bus. Nobody was hurt, but they ended up like tilted on their side and then had to spend a little time in Germany. It was a very Jordan-esque story in the sense that Jordan's like, yeah, just chill, whatever. But like crazy. So Jordan's on a tour bus this summer that crashed in Germany while he was touring with his girl. All right, that's a bunch of media day. I got a whole page worth of other, well, where is it? There, page worth of other notes for you that we'll have for the everydayers tomorrow on the program, and we'll start getting a little bit more basketball and a lot of preseason. I haven't done any of my preseason projection work I've already put out, so it's all coming up as we continue on Locked On Jazz, your daily podcast on the Utah Jazz. Please be with us every day. We're walking toward opening day. It's kind of awesome. Love it. It is Locked On Jazz, your daily podcast on the Utah Jazz, part of the Locked On Podcast Network.